podcast exploring the vast worlds of He-Man and She-Ra. Join Sean Scavarna and Matthew Duke as they discuss the history and mystery of Eternia and Etheria, diving deep into all incarnations of Masters of the Universe.
Hey, you know who's back? It's the Legends of Grayskull podcast. Now that you know, let's go get ready for the show. It's the Legends of Grayskull podcast. Sit back and enjoy the ride right now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to L.O.G on MYP. This is the mini-series where Legends of Grayskull goes through all of the MYP He-Man and the Masters of the Universe episodes from episode 1 all the way to episode 39. Today we are on episode 7, Lessons. I, of course, am Matthew Duch, here again with Curtis Ackerman. Curtis, how are we doing today?
Fantastic.
All right, it's been a week since the deep end. We got all that fishy smell wiped off of us. We're ready to go into and learn some lessons. Lessons is the 7th episode of the series. It originally aired on October 11th, 2002. Written by the late, great Larry DiTillio and directed by Gary Hartel. Larry, as I'm sure most of our fans know, was a staple of the Filmation He-Man and She-Ra series, writing some classic episodes, known for creating Granomir, among many other wonderful characters. And we as fans we were ready. We knew that this was going to be his episode from the get-go, and we were ready to see what Larry could do in this new era of He-Man. So,
truly a legend.
Absolutely. All right, so we start off right away. Royal Palace, Orko shenanigans. We talked a little about last episode, but here is old school Orko, and I've got to believe that has everything to do with Larry writing this episode.
I do as well, but I like the fact that they, we made a mention of it in the last episode, that they started to kind of tease this, relationship between Orko and Man-at-Arms, where he's frustrating Man-at-Arms and he's kind of messing up. He's kind of doing some things wrong. And so this doesn't feel like it's a complete diversion from everything else that's happened so far. It feels like it's kind of been building, which was nice.
And I like the fact. So we start off here where they're finishing the last of the rebuild from Skeletor's destruction in the beginning, part 1. Mm-hmm. And I like, again, these threads that are running through. If this had been a Filmation series, right, like Skeletor would have hurt the palace, and next episode everything would have been fine. But it's taken them 6 episodes, to rebuild and put everything back together, and just getting that sense of time and everything in there. It makes all this have real weight to it. Like, nothing is just lightly, nothing is magically repaired. They, in between also fighting Skeletor for the last few episodes, they're also rebuilding, working on all this stuff. So, it really helps give you a real sense of time and stakes to all of it.
Yeah, I mean, little did they know, though, that, Skeletor can't do as much damage as Orko.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, so they're raising the last statue of the Elder back up. Orko decides to use a spell to make it lighter. Unfortunately, with all the levers and pulleys they're using, this throws everything out of whack. The statue floats up into the air. Orko's trying to get control of it, but Man-at-Arms steps in and stops him, causing the statue to fall and domino affect the other statues, and they're back to square one in this garden.
Yep.
But I did like the fact that Orko was at least trying, and it seemed like he was about to get it under control. And technically, Man-at-Arms stepping in is what caused it to fall.
Yeah, because he basically told him to stop, which to him meant stop making this thing float, which means let this thing fall.
Right.
Which then led to a domino effect. So, yeah, I think his magic works better in this universe than in Filmation, but clearly there's still some problems.
Yep.
So.
But unfortunately, this, as everyone looks at Orko and shames him, this causes Orko to do one of his classic Filmation tropes and run away.
Yes.
And he heads to Grayskull.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, at Snake Mountain, as Curtis alluded to, the evil warriors are watching this and having a good old time.
Oh,
and they
man.
do make the comment that Orko does more damage than Skeletor could.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is interesting because they're just sitting there, like Skeletor is not in the room at this point, and they're just sitting there kind of cracking on Skeletor, which we've seen a couple times now in the series.
Yep.
That they'll say these kind of things, and then inevitably every time they say it, then Skeletor walks in. So
well, I also just like the fact of I mean, we said the whole, they just spent the whole deep end just watching and following along, and now they're just like chilling watching TV. It's a different dynamic, but I like it. It's just a bunch of mercenaries and thugs that are just hanging out. Like, it's just interesting thing about it. It's like without Skeletor kind of unifying them and pushing them toward this greater evil purpose. Like, how much of these guys would even be anything above maybe petty robbers? Like. I don't know, it's an interesting dynamic, and I like it that you really feel like these guys are have a life and are in it for themselves, and they're not just like, they're not weapons in a cabinet waiting for Skeletor to pull them out and say attack.
Yeah, and they definitely take some sort of joy in watching bad things happen to the good guys. Regardless of whether they played a part in it or not.
Right.
So.
Yeah, they're bad people, but they're not necessarily supervillains on their own regard.
Correct.
Yeah. But Skeletor interrupts them and says that maybe he should hire the Jester as one of his evil warriors instead of them.
Ouch. That's gotta hurt.
Luckily, Skeletor has a new plan. Now that he knows that the power is inside of Grayskull, he's just got to find a way to get inside of Grayskull. Luckily, he knows of an ancient artifact hidden in the ruins of Zalatia called the Ramstone, which has the ability to get through any barrier. So, Evelyn unfortunately thinks that Skeletor has some bad info. That the Ramstone's just a legend, nothing real. Skeletor tells him to go anyways.
Yeah. Now, when she says that. And we can get into it more as the episode goes on, but I wonder if she said that because she really did think it was a legend, or because she was trying to keep him away from getting it. Like there's some question in my mind on what her thought process was.
After watching the whole episode, there's no question in my mind, but we can get into that a bit later. Okay. But at this point, watching it for the first time, I'm thinking. Like, I think she thinks it's just a legend.
Gotcha.
Like, she is convincing to me in saying that.
Okay.
But yeah, so the evil warriors head off to Zalatia. We turn back up with Orko. He has gone to Grayskull seeking guidance from the sorceress. At first, he doesn't think that she's going to let him in, but she eventually does. As he wanders into Grayskull, he is met with many facades and illusions and creatures,
and scary paths and everything else.
Yeah, we got a lot of MC Escher type stuff going on in this Castle Grayskull. Like the inside's very cavernous, lots of staircases that don't look like they should meet the way they do, hallways that fade into each other. Very disorienting.
Which makes sense, because if somebody gets into Grayskull, you wouldn't want them to just know where they're going and have everything, So it's a good story point.
It is, and that's what. And when the sorceress does, when Orko does bump into the sorceress, literally, she does say the same thing, that they're all illusions.
That's funny. I like that too, where he's moving pretty much at a quick pace and hits her, and she does not budge. Like.
Nope.
Like she's just stationary.
Yep.
So I thought that made me chuckle a little bit.
And she explains that all the illusions are there to confound would-be invaders. Orko says it's effective, and we get treated to the friendliest interpretation of the sorceress in this entire series, in my opinion. She is very willing to listen. She's very comforting.
I don't think she's quite to the level of Filmation, but you're
No.
right.
I'm talking
to past episodes and what we get down the road. Yeah, this is the nicest version of this sorceress.
Yes, absolutely. And again, credit to Larry for he wrote her in this way. Absolutely.
You can tell a difference. Now, I wouldn't say it's so different that it's jarring, but it definitely is different.
It definitely. Oh, 100%. Yes. But yeah, she listens to him, and he says he's tired of being a screw up. We get the first mention of Orko the Great in this series. He says he honestly he just wants to go back to Trala, where he was Orko the Great. He was a great magician. He wasn't just a screw up and a jester.
Yep.
And she agrees. She's like, okay, I'll help you, but wait in the library while I'm working on the spell to send you home.
Yeah, it's gonna take some time.
Yep. So he goes to the library where he meets an old man who takes him through the book of yesteryear, where he says Orko is featured prominently, and we get our Orko origin story. Again,
an old librarian that we have no idea who this guy is or where he came
from.
Weird
guy in a hood. Yeah. Weird guy in a hood. Now, as in 2002 and digging through the archives at He-Man.org and the message boards and everything, as this episode was going on, there was definitely a is this Eldor? Because by that point I had discovered about the powers of Grayskull and Eldor and Hero and everything. And now I
didn't get that at all. I assumed throughout the whole thing that this is the sorceress, projecting this other image of another person to try to talk or go through his problems.
Yeah, and that's what it ends up being. But as it was airing, before we get to the points where it's
I didn't know anything about Eldor till I don't know, maybe 3 years ago.
So
that
that was at a point where I was digging through all that kind of, everyone's posting on the message boards about the the concept stuff and everything else, and I was learning about the powers of Grayskull. So yeah, it was definitely oh shoot, are they doing Eldor in this series? I
can see that.
We're still early in the series where it's anything's possible. Up until this point, we didn't even know how Orko came to Eternia. We knew he was from Trala, but this is where it cements it. We see him, and it pretty much follows the Filmation origin. He winds up in the Tar Swamp. He saves Orko and Cringer, or Adam and Cringer, from the Mudhoppers. So he loses his wand in the process,
which is a nice callback. It's nice to see, a young Orko, young Prince Adam, and have his magic work. And they bring up this whole thing with his wand, which is an interesting concept that maybe that the loss of his wand is what is making his powers not work the way he wants it to.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, meanwhile, the evil warriors are on their way to Zalicia. Mechanex spots them and reports in to Adam and Man-at-Arms. They go to see what they're up to in the Wind Raider. I had forgotten that the Wind Raider popped up this early in the series, because we never actually got a toy of it. We got toys of almost all the other vehicles, but they never did the actual Wind Raider in this line,
which is interesting.
Yes, very.
you would think out of all the vehicles, that would be one that would be right at the top.
Mm-hmm. For some reason in my mind, I remembered it being introduced in season 2. It's featured very prominently in season 2. But yeah, no, it actually appears here. And it's a cool update. I mean, you instantly recognize it, but it's a little bit more armored out and it's more sleek, less boat-like. So,
yep.
But it's a nice redesign. Man-Arms and Adam head to see what they're up to. As the evil warriors get to the ruins, unable to penetrate it until Evelyn uses a crystal and a magic phrase to raise the ruins from the sands below. And we see that it is a city that sits on top of a giant havoc-like ram skull.
Which is interesting, how easily she's able to get into this place.
Yeah, weird, isn't it?
Almost like she's got a key.
Yeah.
Like, somebody left a key under the mat for her or something.
And I like how that, in Beastman and Trapjaw aren't dumb. They look at her like, what's going on? And she just kind of blows off and is like, come on, let's go,
Right.
But even Beastman and Trapjaw aren't just like, oh, okay, that was lucky. They're like, wait a minute here.
Yeah, there's definitely something fishy going on.
As they descend into the ruins, they do find the chamber with the ramstone. They remark that this is going to be easier than they thought. Evelyn casts a cloaking spell on herself to disappear into the shadows as a new wizard appears. This is the Faceless One, first appearance, and he is an old ghostly wizard with purple armor, and he easily takes down Beastman and Trapjaw.
Which they don't say his name, right?
Yeah, Evelyn did back when she was telling
did she?
Skeletor.
Okay.
She said the legend says it's guarded by the Faceless One.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
So, but we don't know who this character is. Like, this character was never brought up in Filmation or anything,
Nope,
correct?
completely new character. This is the first new character to MYP here. So,
gotcha.
Evelyn appears from the shadows, and it appears that they have some history, as the Faceless One asks if she's still wasting her time serving Skeletor.
Mm-hmm.
And she tells him that she came here to warn him that Skeletor's after the Ramstone before sucker punching him through 3 walls and stealing the Ramstone. But yes, this is the moment where it's like, okay, what's really going on here? Because he is completely comfortable with her. They obviously have some history together. But we're left to wonder that as Evelyn swipes the Ramstone and the evil warriors hightail it out of there.
Absolutely.
They meet as Adam and Man-Arm see them coming out. Adam transforms into He-Man, which we do see canonically here that there is actually a physical manifestation that happens with that. As Evelyn sees off in the distance a beam of power come down from the sky and strike something in the distance. So that's definitely happening, or if that's just us, but here there is definitely some power that comes down when Adam transforms into He-Man.
Yes, there is.
Man-at-Arms tries to subdue them. The Wind Raider gets destroyed in the process, and he is left to fight Beastman and Trapjaw as He-Man and Battlecat take off after Evelyn, who is going to deliver the Ramstone to Skeletor.
Yes.
Curtis is out of the episode.
It's just kind of like, just they're moving the story along. There's not a, I don't really feel like there's a whole lot happening yet. It's just kind of like they're progressing the story, but it's not really a whole lot to talk about. I did notice though, like as Evelyn is kind of explaining things to the other evil warriors, she's also explaining like what they're doing to the audience. So it's like, like I'm talking to all the dummies, it's like what she's doing. Like I'm talking to these dummies, but I'm also talking to you dummies. So it's interesting how they use her in that fashion.
Absolutely. So now we head back to Grayskull. The old man is still showing Orko some other things. He's showing when he would help others through difficult times, showing him
the king and queen laugh at a tough
when
time
they seem upset. turning Adam into a plant.
Yeah, that was funny.
But yeah, just showing that, you know, everyone's useful in their own way.
Yeah.
They are interrupted when the old man senses that there's danger approaching and vanishes out of the library, only to reappear in front of the sorceress's magic window as the cloak and the disguise is shed off, and we see that is in fact the sorceress. Funny enough, they never addressed the fact. Like Orko never realizes that was the sorceress.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of interesting. It's like she did her part, and I have to commend them for it. Like, because it feels like one of those things that like most shows would go to explain, but they realize you don't need to explain it. Like, it's fine with Orko just believing that was a random visitor to the sorceress.
Yeah,
like,
I mean it's what he needed to help him see the value that he brings. You know.
Yep. And as Orko meets up with the sorceress there, they look on the screen and they see Skeletor is outside of the castle with the Ramstone in his possession. Sorceress is not happy. As He-Man appears and Skeletor starts blasting, first taking out Battle Cat. This is the scene that makes the episode. I'm sorry. Ever since we watched in 2002, this sequence here in front of Grayskull, Skeletor with the Ramstone, like this is the episode right here. From the moment, you know, Battle Cat jumps out, at Skeletor with He-Man on his back. Skeletor blasts,
knocked silly.
Yeah, He-Man jumps off and lands, and then we see the Battle Cat mask just roll onto the drawbridge, and we see Battle Cat laying there just passed out, and the look on He-Man's face as he checks on Battle Cat and turns his attention to Skeletor. He is ticked, that hair blowing in the wind. He takes on Skeletor. Skeletor launches the power of the Ram Stone at him as it manifests as a giant green spectral ram. Sorceress warns him not to challenge the power of the Ram Stone. He-Man is blind with rage. He goes right into it, taking the brunt of the attack. He's got the power knocked right out of him, thrown back 100 feet, and Adam lies on the ground unconscious.
Now, it's a great sequence. I really enjoyed it. But how does nobody at that point realize that He-Man is Adam? Like he's right in front of him, gets blasted, turns from He-Man to Adam, and nobody notices.
I think there's a good enough because of the green spectralness of the ram. If you're looking from Skeletor's point of view, all Skeletor's seeing is basically the backside of the ram, right?
Understood, but as we see a little bit later, like Evelyn's kind of lurking around, right? Because later on something's going to happen where she has to intervene. Right now, she's just kind of lurking around, so she's not able to see either. Like nobody notices that He-Man turns into Prince Adam.
I can give it a pass because especially you look back at that sequence, right? He-Man's holding the power sword and like the energy's diverting on either side of him, and it's like a solid green wall of energy.
Okay, so you're
I'm
saying
okay with
the
saying
energy
that
itself concealed it enough. What about when the energy's gone and Adam's just laying there? So
well, then he's back there. Then he's like 100 feet launched him,
but he's still like able to be seen. You know, it's not like he disappeared.
No, but I think they even do a good job of showing. If you look at the angle where he's lying, it's like you gotta go like up a hill to like that overcrop that goes up to the castle. Okay. So I think he landed down and out. So
he landed in a very convenient spot. If it was in a different place that Skeletor hit him with the Ramstone, his secret would be out.
Correct. Yep. Okay. Yep. I'm okay with that. My only other idea is we kind of talked about before, right? Like Evelyn is not dumb in this series.
No.
What if
Although, why did she give the Ramstone to Skeletor rather than just keeping it for herself in the first place? But whatever.
Well, we'll get it.
No,
We'll
go
get
ahead.
into that
Go
too.
ahead. Yeah.
All I was gonna say is, do you think if Evelyn saw this, do you really think the first thing she would do is go tell Skeletor?
I think that,
or do you think she'd hold on to that?
I think somehow she would use it to her benefit over the next 30 episodes. So,
Right.
which we don't see, but
which we don't. But I again, I'm still okay with the idea that I think the same. I think Evelyn would hold that. Like that's
but
information.
I think we would have. I think we would have noticed, like, if that was a plot point, if it was something
Yes.
that she saw, we would have noticed her noticing. You
Yes.
know, even if she didn't say anything about it. But
yeah, I just wanted to go down that path. I
I
fully
digress.
think.
I mean, I get what you're saying. It was just, to me, it was like, how, like, as soon as it happened and I see Adam coming out of it, I'm like, okay, this just happened right in front of all these folks. But all right.
I think if you go back and watch again, the green energy around him, it blasts him back, and he falls conveniently down a ditch, basically.
All right.
And then and that's also, remember, because the sorceress, she at that point she turns to Orko. She's like, I gotta go get Adam.
Yeah.
We need He-Man. You need to distract Skeletor. And I think that's part. I think part of it is her concern, like Skeletor can't just waltz into the castle. But the other part is, I also don't want Skeletor heading down that ditch trying to finish off He-Man.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
So I think that's part of that important there too, where she's like, just distract him. No matter what, distract him. We need time. And Skeletor does immediately turn the Ramstone onto the castle drawbridge and brings it down and prepares to enter the castle, with only Orko left to defend it.
But Orko, and this is twice in this series that I know of that Orko definitely puts himself in harm's way. The first we talked about was, after Adam becomes He-Man and he's doing kind of the training with Man-at-Arms, and he's, fighting what we know are robots with hologram projections of the evil warriors. But Orko doesn't know that, and he thinks it really is the evil warriors, and he jumps in front of a blast. Right. This is kind of the second time in this series that we see Orko kind of fearlessly getting out there and putting himself out there, even though he knows he's overmatched.
Right. And yeah, so he does it. He pulls out a pot. He switches it with the Ramstone.
Yeah.
That's the magic pot of Grayskull.
Yeah.
He manages to get the Ramstone. He cannot remember the incantation Skeletor used on it. So unfortunately, he cannot blast Skeletor with it, but he does turn and run, taking Skeletor into the castle.
Real quick, when he switches out that with Skeletor, do you feel like that in any way lessens how great Skeletor is in this series? Like, is that any sort of turning point to you that he was just outsmarted by Orko? Like this Skeletor that we've been talking about, that has learned from his mistakes, that is really knowledgeable and is using all of his skills to fight He-Man because he just can't go against him, toe to toe. Being outsmarted by Orko, does that in any way put a shadow on what we have talked about him being so great at this point?
I don't think so, because I think it just gives him a flaw, which is where he underestimates certain individuals.
Okay.
So he's it's his blind spot. And I feel like we covered this a little bit in another episode, though it's escaping me at the moment. But like, he's so worried about He-Man, Man-at-Arms, the Masters. And he's like, the Jester.
Right.
Okay. Oh wait, what'd you do? It's that he's so confident, and he feels he is so above Orko that's the downfall there, to where he's not taking him seriously.
Yeah.
1 second. So yeah, I think that's just kind of like his blind spot, and it works for me, like, because I don't want this Skeletor to have no flaws. You know what I mean? Like,
well, The other thing I would say, and wanted to wait to this point to kind of bring this up, is so now he's lost the Ramstone, but Grayskull's already open, which to me is the reason why you needed the Ramstone, was to get into Grayskull. But he seems to be really focused on the Ramstone now rather than just going inside Grayskull and doing whatever it is he came to do. The other thing is that where are the other evil warriors? Like he, from the last episode, realized that Grayskull must have some sort of special importance.
Yep.
It's a lot of these missions or whatever that we've seen, he's just sent them on their own. This one he thinks is important enough for him to go himself personally. But why doesn't he have backup? Why isn't this an all-out attack on Grayskull? That kind of confused me in this one. It didn't seem as strategic as he's been so far in the series.
Well, Beastman and Trapjaw are tangling with Man-at-Arms right now because they were left to fight at Zalesia, so they're there. Triclops he sent off at the beginning, and I think and then Evil Lynn is doing her lurkingness. So I think that's all he had. I mean, that at least accounts for everybody.
We've seen Clawful, Merman, Whiplash, so far this series. Like, I don't know. I would just think
counts for everybody that
was in the episode.
Seen.
Correct. I'm just saying, like, if he felt like that this was such a important thing, you would think that this would be an all-out, all hands on deck, kind of everybody's involved in this kind of thing, and we just don't see that. So, and I understand every episode you can't have every single warrior at your disposal, but this one seems important enough that I think he should have had more firepower than just himself at the door of Grayskull.
I can definitely agree, and I felt the same thing. This is definitely the weakest the Warriors have been. I guess you could just chalk it up to the fact that since we don't see them, maybe they're on another mission somewhere. We have praised them so far in this series about saying how the villains seem like they have their own motivations. So this could be one of those moments where it kind of bites Skeletor in the butt that they are fully fleshed out characters and not just waiting around for him to say, I need you.
Yeah.
But it could have been nice to have a line or something like, this is all I'm sending you guys because you're all we have now. Just maybe accounting for them.
Even Evil Lynn, like Evil Lynn came back, gave him the Ramstone, and we understand she's present, she's around there, but she's not at the door of Grayskull with him. She's not standing side by side with him as he's doing this. So, if I'm Skeletor, I don't know. Maybe he's just arrogant enough that he thinks he can do this by himself. Maybe that's another character flaw. It just seems like he would want more help. But
I agree, and I think he might have thought Evil Lynn was going to be a help, and then she wasn't.
Gotcha.
For the Ramstone, I think the idea for him is, yes, I'm in Grayskull, but now Orko has the Ramstone. So even if I stay in Grayskull, he could give that to the Masters, and that would allow them access. Like I need to get the Ramstone back so that no one else can follow me inside of Grayskull.
Do you think his goal here is to take over Grayskull, or does he feel like there's some sort of power within Grayskull that he's just there to get and leave?
Well, he doesn't know at this point. He knows there's some power there, right?
Right.
But he doesn't know exactly what. He doesn't know how long it's going to take him. He gets into Grayskull a little bit here. He sees the defenses. So I think in his mind, he's like, I'm going to need some time in here.
Okay.
I mean, technically, he doesn't even know about the sorceress yet.
Correct.
So,
yeah, I mean, I just assumed that he thought there was something to go in there, retrieve, and leave. Like this is just an in and out kind of thing.
Maybe
but if he feels like this, he's going to have to hold this for a while in order to, either permanently or at least for a bit to uncover the secrets. Then that, I guess, it makes sense for him to try to want to get the Ramstone back to protect what he's, rightfully stolen.
Either way, that's a powerful hit. Like if I stole a nuclear bomb and then someone steals it from me, do I really want them to have it? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, but yeah, so he's chasing Orko. Orko runs back out of the castle and gets sucker punch, sucker spelled, sucker jolted in the back by Evelyn. He drops the Ramstone into the abyss, and Evelyn jumps down to catch
Dives. Just
I
not
love that
knowing what-
spell.
Yeah. She just
She
dives without
yeah.
any hesitation, just like, okay, this big giant open pit of abyss in front of Grayskull, and she just like jumps in head first. But
Yep.
yeah, that spell was pretty awesome. And all of a sudden it just like this hand comes out of the side of the rock and just kind of cradles her.
Cradles her and the Ramstone.
Yeah.
As she delivers the line, "The things I do for family."
Yes.
And then
line.
we're back up on the drawbridge. Skeletor grabs Orko.
At this point, we don't know who she's referring to.
No, not
right?
at all. You're just.
I mean,
like,
she
wait
could
a
be
minute.
referring to kind of, family like Skeletor. Not that they're related, but
right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like
the family you choose versus the family you're born into.
Correct.
Yep. But what I love is then Skeletor gets a hold of Orko. He's like, "Where's the Ramstone?" He goes, "I dropped it into the abyss." And they both just kind of assume it's gone. And it's another instance where it's like they don't go into Orko has to assume it was Skeletor that blasted him.
Mhm.
Skeletor doesn't know what happened. All he knows is Orko doesn't have the Ramstone. And we just kind of roll with it. The action keeps moving. We don't get bogged down here, which I like. It's just like,
Yeah.
Everyone's assuming there's not a lot of there's not over talking. You know what I mean? They're not like, well, who blasted you? What could have happened? Like, no, it just, where's the Ramstone? It's in the abyss.
From their individual perspectives, it makes sense to just write it off. Like, this thing's gone. I mean, look down there. It's endless. Like, this thing's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly.
Now it's time to move on to the next thing. So
yep. At the same time, the sorceress is finally successful in waking up Adam. As he hears that Orko is in danger, he grabs his power sword and reinvokes the power. Adam or Skeletor and He-Man face off on the drawbridge. Powers clashing, great effects, but He-Man is victorious.
It looks like they're gonna hold, like Skeletor's gonna hold his own for a second. Like for a quick second, it's like, okay, these two are evenly matched, and then not.
You're right. You blasted my cat. You hurt my little buddy.
No, I mean, like, even as they collide there, like after all this, they collide, and for like a split second, it looks like he's gonna hold his own against He-Man, and then you get that punch, and he's gone. So
absolutely,
yeah.
As Skeletor retreats, Sorceress is able to heal Battle Cat, and He-Man.
The first. Watching it through, I had to go back and like play it in slow motion, because when she shows up kind of with Battle Cat, it looks like Battle Cat's got a black eye, which I thought was like a cool thing. But then as I played it again, like slowly, it's just like, I guess, shadow on the drawing. But at first I thought he had a black eye, which I thought would be really freaking cool.
It makes
sense. Knocked
sense.
his mask off, gave him a black eye. But yeah, it was just, I think, the art.
Yep. He-Man finds out that Orko was thinking about going back to Trala. Questions why, but Orko realizes that he is needed here with the family that he has come to love. Meanwhile, Evelyn, we're back at Zalasia, where the Ramstone has been returned. And the Faceless One reads a note from Evelyn saying that Skeletor will not bother him again. And the Faceless One muses to himself that there may be hope yet for his daughter.
Dun, dun, dun.
And as back in 2002, we didn't see this coming at all. We thought, I guess we thought maybe a mentor or an old friend or so. Like, obviously she's got ties to this place, but just the idea of Evelyn having a father figure just never crossed our mind. We're so used to our villains just being, here I am, I'm evil, you know.
Yeah, we got kind of a backstory hint a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
And then we ready for the moral?
Yep, go ahead.
And the moral is your friends will appreciate you even when you make mistakes.
Yes.
So yeah,
As Orko finds out time and
Orko
time
learns
again.
throughout the episode. Yes.
So, Curtis, it's that time. We've reached the end of our episode. We've got our Power Sword rankings. For those of you who don't know, it's 3 Power Swords is the absolute best perfect episode. 2 Power Swords is an above average episode. 1 Power Sword is a good episode. We got the Cosmic Enforcer. That's right down the middle. Then we got 1 Havoc Staff is bad. 2 Havoc Staffs is worse. 3 Havoc Staffs cast this episode into Despondos.
Kind of struggling with this one.
Would you like me to go first? Would that help?
Yeah, go ahead.
I always seem to make you go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
This one's a solid 2 Power Swords for me. This is well above average. Larry DiTilio behind the helm. These characters feeling so familiar. The Sorceress is, I really like what he does with the Sorceress here.
Mhm.
I wish she was more like this throughout the entirety of the series, where she's still a little standoffish and cold, but she's more motherly.
Mhm.
Top that with Evelyn origin. Top that with Orko origin, at least cementing that this is his origin in this series. Top that with seeing that there's something so powerful that it can knock the literal He-Man out of Adam. That fight sequence, the animation, like this is honestly, I was struggling between 3 and 2.
That's where I'm at.
There's
That's
still
where I'm
some
at.
flaws here. I had to
yeah.
go 2 because it's not the perfect episode, but this is the damn best episode we've had thus far in the series. In my opinion.
That's where I'm at, because I it's definitely a 2, but I think it could be a 3. And the more that I think about it, the importance of Grayskull, the whole Orko backstory is nice. The Sorceress being, somewhat warm.
Yep.
The kind of battle between Skeletor and He-Man, the Evelyn stepping up. I think I'm gonna go 3.
He's going 3. The first 3 Power Sword. I can't fault you.
I was struggling between the 2, but if am I gonna say this is the absolute best episode ever of He-Man? No. But if I had to choose between 2 and 3, I think it's more towards 3 than it is 2. Okay. So I just really enjoyed this episode. I think it's a good standalone one. I think it also progresses the story. It hits all the right notes. So
yeah, I can't fault you there. I completely agree. It's a great episode. Oh,
I did want to bring up one more thing too.
Sure.
As I was finishing this one, and I've noticed it as I've watched the other ones, but definitely on this one, I kind of took time to watch through the credits and stuff. And the art at the end, like through the credits, is really good. I love like just the fighting stance pictures of like Trapjaw and all the different, like it's just,
and that's all from the beginning. That's all taken right from there. So,
and it's really good artwork. I think it's a good way to close out the show is just putting these like individual like pictures instead of just like a black screen with writing.
Yep.
Throwing those pictures up is a nice way to kind of finish it out so that, people actually want to stay and watch it. So
I agree. And it showcases how great the animation really is in this.
Yeah.
And I know as the series progresses, one of the things in these early episodes that brings it down is they like to do that like shadow shading where a lot of characters are just in grays. They're gonna get away from that, and that really helps as well.
Well, I will say that, like with this episode, we talked early on about like the spinny weapons and all that kind of stuff, and the anime style of it feels like that's kind of calming down quite a bit. Like there's very little of that here.
Yeah, they quickly get away from that. It's very prevalent in the beginning, but then after that, they're pretty much it very quickly gets into its own feel. So,
yep.
But yeah, this is definitely an episode where it's like, okay, and especially as a fan in 2002 watching this, this is the episode where it's like, okay, this is going to honor the past while still giving us something new. And this was definitely the episode that cemented it to where like, okay, I can breathe a little easier. I think I'm okay with where this series is going to go.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We will be back next week for episode 8, The Siren Song. Until then, guys, make sure you're watching on Amazon Prime and click all those buttons down below.
Oh, come on.